and I'm steering, and all of a sudden, in silence, the tiller goes soft over, and the boat comes hard up into the wind. And I was like, and I wiggled it, and there was nothing.
Oh, man. Mia, it is August 31st as we are recording right now. The last time you and I sat down in this container office at our house in Sweden together was back in April. It has been a pretty ridiculous year up to now for the two of us. Both good and bad, stressful, lots of fun. I just got back from Greenland. You sailed across the Atlantic again. Can you describe what this year has been like for you, sort of in the context of the last 8 years at 59 North in general, and how you feel right now? Like, how has this year felt compared to some of the other years we've had, and what are you looking forward to now, having gotten over this hump of ours?
I mean, this year has been, like you said, it's been pretty stressful in one way, because we started the year with still having a FALKEN refitted, and it was a pretty unknown at that point, because we had not sailed FALKEN with crew, and here we are, 8 months later, and I think we've had over 100 or close to 100 crew sailing on her now, and that's really cool to we've done 2 transatlantics. I did one, you did one, and been visiting some really fun places we are familiar with, and also been to new territories. I think in February it was pretty stressful just with the unknown. Like, we have a newly refitted boat that we did sail try, but you never really know how is it gonna perform. And it's been really cool to hear all the feedback we get from crew on it. And one feedback I think is fun is the one from your dad, because he's been with us now since you and me met, and around all the boats and projects and stuff. And he got to sail up from Lunenburg to St. John's early this summer with Andy. I wasn't aboard, but he told me afterwards that he admitted he was pretty intimidated for seeing the boat, because at the dock she's a big boat when you see her. And but he said, like most of the crew say, that when you get on the boat, she shrinks in a good way. Like, she all of a sudden she becomes a sailboat just like anything else, and the size doesn't really matter. She's just a really nice boat, fast, but also comfortable and safe. So I think that was a fun feedback. But yeah, we're sitting here now in the end of August. I can't believe it's the end of August. I feel like the summer hasn't really started, and it's almost coming to an end here in Sweden. So, but no, it does feel really good.
I say to people, the reason I feel more relaxed now than I felt in a long time. I mean, it's 2023. The last time you and I have had 59 North, or the last time 59 North has just run trips, was 2018, Svalbard. Because in Longyearbyen is when I was on the phone with the owner of what became Ice Bear, Tindra at the time, and started to make the deal to buy the second boat. And you and I, when we were on Ice Bear, before we actually bought it, we had that charter agreement. We sat together in Ile de Saints in the Caribbean, and we're just we're at a turning point now. Do we keep just running 12 trips a year, you and me, on Eastbjorn, or do we try to build the big business a little bit bigger so that we can have a family and have a little bit more freedom? And 6 years later, did you think it was going to take this long and be this difficult? Because I think, knock on wood, we're pretty close to getting to that vision of what we originally thought about.
I mean, I think we had a couple bumps in the road along the line, and both with stress and also what we do is such an unusual thing that it's not just, you can't just buy the manual for what we do and just follow the manual. You kind of have to invent it along the way, and that's, I think, why it's been stressful, because I'm the one who always open up the manual. But I think for you it's been exciting because you were the trial and error guy. But no, it does feel really good to have Eastbjorn is up and running. She's done at the OGR start right now. FALKEN is on the way between Iceland on route to Ireland, and just seeing the boats in action and knowing that this is working, and crew are loving it, we are loving it, everyone is just having a good time. And I think I'm also a big thanks to everyone who trusted our vision along the way, because there's been a lot of turning points, but yeah, that's pretty cool.
I think you and I need to sit down and have like a full podcast episode about this, because there's like so much to talk about, but our intro is running long here and I want to get to today's episode, which is a fun one. This is technically the second episode I've recorded at sea, but the first one was just between islands in the Azores. It wasn't quite a big passage. This one, James and I recorded between Greenland and Iceland. So it was like in the middle of, the Denmark Strait, pretty gnarly stretch of ocean after the weather had kind of calmed down a little bit. And James and I sat down in the salon. The boat's heeled over at like 15 degrees. And we sat down and caught up. James had sailed with me to Greenland, and it was a really, really cool episode. So I'm very excited about this new podcast season. We've got 10 episodes coming in a row now. And I think one of them, Mia, we definitely have to make, you and me, let's catch up on the last 5 years of the business, because it feels to me that the first time we can actually take a deep breath in those 5 years and like exhale. Yeah, exactly. It feels really good. So thanks to all you guys who listen, and thanks for the continued support. And you'll hear more on this topic for sure to come later. For now, enjoy today's episode with James Frederick, aka James the Sailor Man. And until next time,
hold fast.
On the Wind is supported this season by AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. I gave AG1 a try because offshore, eating balanced nutritional meals comes secondary to managing the boat, not to mention managing my sleep and seasickness. I drink AG1 as part of my routine in the watch schedule, usually before my first cup of coffee, and it makes me feel confident that I'm getting the nutrition I need no matter how the rest of my day's eating goes. I actually started drinking AG1 years ago as part of my fitness routine ashore before 59 North even existed. But now that I spend a big chunk of my time at sea each year, it's become an even more important part of my routine in order to maintain my overall health while my main focus is required elsewhere on the boat. I can cover all my nutritional bases for the whole day with 1 scoop of AG1 mixed in my water bottle each morning. It tastes great, makes me feel great, and it costs less than $3 a day. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/onthewind. That's drinkag1.com/onthewind. Check it out. On the Wind is also supported by our very good friends, back again, Forbes Horton Yachts. We've had a fantastic relationship with Forbes over the years. He's been a friend of mine in Annapolis and a work colleague for many, many years. In fact, since long before 59 North even existed. Forbes is a sailor himself, so he understands boats. He understands offshore sailing especially. He and his wife took a Tartan 34 to the Caribbean and back in the day. And they still sail today on the Chesapeake. If you have a boat that you're looking to buy, whether or not Forbes is listing it, he can be your buyer's broker. Or if it's come time to sell your boat, he can, of course, list it and be your selling broker. Forbes is fun to work with. He's a really great guy, knows his stuff, and is not your typical blowhard broker. So check out ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. And if you're around at the Annapolis Sailboat Show, he will be there at the X Yachts exhibition, which is out on the docks, out by where the Woodwind is, and you can meet us there. We'll announce this later, but a couple times a day we're going to fire the cannon out at Forbes's booth with X Yachts. So go say hi to Forbes if you're at the boat show this year, and if you want to buy or sell your dream boat, check out ForbesYachts.com. Thanks again to Forbes Horton for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. So Mia, speaking of sailing with us, you've been organizing the crew for this year. We have a lot more capacity now that we have a bigger boat with Falcon, and we have some open bunks left this year and quite a bit left next year. We're about to launch the 2025 calendar, a couple surprises in there for you, but what's the update on if you want to come sailing with us, what is available right now, and what are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited because I'm going to go sailing this fall. But we have one open bunk in September, actually, on Falcon. We got a last-minute cancellation, and that's going from Ireland down to Portugal. So actually, the next leg, we have one open space. And then we have a couple spaces open on a passage in October from Azores to Portugal. Both of them are Falcon. Eastbourne is sold out for the year. But yeah, a few open spaces on Falcon this year. And then if anyone would want to come sail with us next year, it's best to just go to 59-north.com/2024 to see some open bunks. But the gist is that we're going to across the Atlantic again via Cape Verde this time, and gonna go to Cuba, Jamaica, up to Bermuda, and cross Atlantic and up to Europe again.
So we're going to be at the boat show again, as usual. We have a booth in a new location this time, right next to where the YouTube booth is. We got to know some of those guys, and we decided to park ourselves next to them. So if you want to come and talk to us about sailing next year, me, you, Mia, and Nikki Henderson are all going to be there for the whole week. We've got a couple events going on. I think, Mia, you set up a website with everything. It's at just 59-north.com/boat show. So you can check out what we have going on there and sign up to the things we have happening outside the show. Anything else to add quick to you want to promote?
I don't think so. I think it's all good.
Awesome. You're listening to On the Wind, my podcast about offshore sailing. I'm your host, Andy Schell. James Frederick, a.k.a. James the Sailor Man, returns to the podcast 4 years after I first interviewed him. Back then, James was still prepping his Alberg 30 TRITEIA in L.A. Now, the boat is in New Zealand after James sailed her over 9,000 miles solo with many adventures along the way. We talked about James's sudden divorce, losing his rudder mid-Pacific, and, of course, him sailing in Greenland with me on board Falcon. Maybe hard to tell in the video, but we're sailing at about a 15 to 20 degree heel right now.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm wedged in my astronaut seat here.
We're bracing ourselves well.
I'm not sure where to start. I've had you on the podcast before, so we've kind of covered your sort of life story. That was a while ago. You've since done quite a bit of sailing yourself, and we'll come back to this Greenland trip and why you're here in the first place. But I think you said yesterday was the 2-year anniversary?
Yep. Yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of me leaving Los Angeles to start my solo circumnavigation. And it was pretty fun to be like in such a different sort of scenario on that day. But yeah, so 2 years ago yesterday, I untied the lines from a guest slip in Marina del Rey, California, and I made way for Hawaii, some of the most remote island chains in the world.
And had quite a bit of drama on the way. I don't want to go too much into that because you've written about it, you talk about it in your movies, but I want to talk about like the emotions around you leaving. You and I were talking about the Pacific and timing and everything, and I asked you like, oh, so August is like a reasonable time to leave California, and you're like, not really.
Yeah.
But
no.
Can you just talk about the circumstances in which you left, and what was your emotional state? Then and then 2-year anniversary yesterday. How did that feel?
Yeah, so like you said, I've written about it a lot, talked about it a lot, and but basically the short of it is like I was already prepared to leave for full-time cruising with my wife at the time, and she left me via text message after the boat was already provisioned. The night before she was supposed to fly back from New York City so that we could leave. So suddenly I was in a state of like everything was in shambles. All of my plans, everything I'd worked for many, many years was kind of just like in a pile of rubble. And I knew the boat was ready because I'd already made a first attempt and had a wind vane failure that made me turn back. So I knew the boat was ready. So I gave myself, from that moment, the day that she left me, cleared everything off the boat, I gave myself 2 weeks, essentially, to make sure my head was in the right place and I wasn't doing something rash. It ended up being 12 days because of the weather window. So, yeah, August 1st is when everything went down, really, and then on the 12th, I had a perfect weather window to leave on a quiet couple days before heavy winds came, and I pushed off. No one knew besides my little brother, my friend Sarah, and my friend Captain David Stovall. I think those are the only people that knew I was leaving.
Oh, that knew you were leaving.
Yeah.
What about friends and family? Did they know about your divorce?
Yeah. Everybody knew what had happened. I'd given them, the the brief, like, I mean, I didn't know much, so I told, my close people what it was, but I kind of went even on a social media blackout for like that 2 weeks. I pre-recorded a video for Instagram and for YouTube that my little brother I asked him to like make it live and post it after I was in the trades. So basically past the point of no return. So
that's why people think that you got divorced while you were at sea.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
that's the
also,
story that I heard that, or I somehow in my head I was like, you were halfway to Hawaii, you got a text message that your wife was leaving you,
Yeah.
and then your rudder failed, and I was like, holy fuck, what the
Yeah.
hell?
I
but
mean,
this wasn't
yeah.
quite the order, but it's still no less dramatic.
Yeah, and even now, 2 years on, just in the last month and a half, I found out a lot more details about the whole situation, which I don't need to go into, but a lot of things were explained in 2 years on. So I actually believe that was going to happen no matter what. So it is what it is,
So did you ever? You never intended to be a solo sailor necessarily.
Well, actually, like, Camille was never interested in doing ocean crossing, so the plan was always for me to do the ocean stuff solo, and she was going to meet me in places, like she would have met me in French Poly, and we would have cruised through the South Pacific or wherever. That was always the plan. She wasn't interested. So I was always interested in doing solo ocean sailing. So that wasn't too big of a change from what the program was going to be anyway. But obviously, when you leave... it was the second lowest point in my life after my mother dying. It was like my mom dying was obviously, hopefully, the lowest I'll ever be. The next lowest was what happened with Camille and like my family just like vanishing into thin air overnight. So I was in a kind of a bad way, but, and you'll understand this quite a bit. I hid from my mother's grief for years, and
So did I.
And it almost took my life. Like I was like, once I had to confront the grief of losing my mom, I was very suicidal. And once I got through that, I realized I can never sort of hide from that grief again. So with this Camille thing, I knew like when everything happened, I was like, okay, I just need to put to sea. I don't want to talk to anybody. Like I have tons of friends in Los Angeles, people that would have distracted me and comforted me, whatever. I was like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to process whatever's happening. And I want to put as many miles between myself and my past life as I can, because there's no future. So
how much of that was escaping versus processing, though? Where's the line?
I don't think it was really escaping. I think basically it was putting myself into solitary confinement, which I wouldn't advise anyone ever do. Now that I've done it,
Why
I
not?
wouldn't redo it.
What was bad
Because
about
you're
it?
literally just by yourself in a boat, like. It's like a feedback loop of your thoughts that aren't necessarily actually educated thoughts. They're not actually truthful thoughts. They're just like the direction you've spun the story, either in your favor or against you. Either way, it's literally just this sort of, you just keep, and you try to meditate your way out of it. You try to distract yourself. But it was just like, yeah, I wouldn't do it. I would do it the same way again. I wouldn't advise anyone else try it because it was pretty gnarly.
Did you? So you have, I've always read and I believe that like writing is the best way to process your thoughts. That like you can't think clearly unless you write about it. Did you find that?
I wrote 20,000 words on that passage.
Wow.
That will eventually be like edited way down into, and then more will be written. Like I'll be writing a book about that scenario, that whole passage, because of everything that happened.
So do you think now this is also, you're processing the grief of your family and all the rest of that, and then you have this rudder failure. Mm-hmm. Was that a good thing? In terms of like helping you process the grief because it gave you a mission.
Yeah, it was funny. It was like I didn't have any nightmares about Camille for 4 days when I was trying to survive at sea. But as soon as I got to steering by drogue, I was like, hell yeah. And I was like stoked. I was like happy. I was actually smiling. I was like, this is amazing. We're like, I'm on course. We're like making way in an impossible situation. And that night, sure enough, the nightmares came back. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So and it came in and out, it's like wake up crying in the middle of the night is super annoying.
So how do you feel like sharing all this? Like, I know you like now, but also in your videos and stuff. I no offense, I haven't watched your videos, but you seem pretty open about this stuff in your videos. What is it like to share all this personal stuff with strangers?
Well, with the passage, which I call the passage film, is the one to Hawaii, where. So this is the thing: is like me and Camille shared our lives online, so there was no way I couldn't address it, which is my biggest horror. There is no like having to like air my dirty laundry and be like, my wife left me. You know, it was just like terrible. I did not want to. And so trying to figure out a way to do that sort of gracefully was difficult. And I filmed me talking about it. I probably have an hour's worth of footage of me talking about it. I edited down to like 3 minutes or less, maybe, where I just said what needed to be said. It was like trying to like be responsible enough to remove my assumptions or my feelings from it and just stating, you know, the facts. Like, this is what I know. She decided she wanted a different life and she chose that life. And so now I'm here. And that was what I had to boil it down to. And I was like when the film premiered on YouTube and I'm like sitting there, I had like a live chat going and everyone's watching it for the first time together. I was like, you know, it was so cringy for me to watch that scene. I was like closing my eyes. I was like, ugh, because I didn't know how people were going to react. And actually the response to that element of the story was far more than I ever expected. Like, literally thousands of people responded. This exact same thing happened to me. I went through thousands.
Wow.
That video has 8,000 comments.
Wow.
It has 3.7 million views. So I could not believe, you know, and I expected like people to be like, oh, you're a pussy or whatever, you know, that, you know, and it didn't matter to me. I'm like, I'm pretty straightforward. I just say exactly what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. Like I have, like my ego is not so fragile that I'm worried about that. So, but to see people's reaction and how they related to it was very shocking to me. And the other thing that's a funny thing too, is like, for someone who is like not, you know, the idea of like having to share such a personal nightmare with like the public, and then for it to go viral and 3.7 million people to like eat popcorn while I'm talking about my wife leaving me is just. But on the flip side of that, it was like that passage was such a Greek tragedy because that wasn't enough, that then I had to have rudder failure, find myself adrift at sea with no rescue, and then have to get myself to shore. So it literally was like all the elements of like, you know, a great story if you don't have to live it.
So did you write about, I saw your article in Yachting World. Did you mention the divorce part in there, or was that just about the rudder failure?
No.
Because like those two things, I mean, are two of the like more dramatic things that can happen to a person in their life, and they happened at the same time for you.
Yeah. And actually, this is the most I've talked about the emotional side. I've avoided it in all other podcast interviews. I've
Why?
touched on it a little bit.
Why have you avoided it?
I don't know. It just felt like, I don't know. I don't know that I was ready to share that. And there's many things that will come out in the book where I talk about what I was really, like I wrote it as I was feeling it.
Yeah.
So it's more honest and it's more like sort of concentrated. I'm a better writer than speaker, I think. So
That makes sense.
Yeah. You know?
I can relate to that for sure. Well, so why do you feel comfortable with talking about it all now? I mean, that question, but also you related to that. You said something the other day when you and I were talking about this, because I hadn't talked to you about this previously either.
No.
And you said Camille deserves to be happy. It was like a very positive spin on things.
And that's been my statement. I think I even said that on the video. I mean, everyone deserves to be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, the way she handled it was terrible. But if she had just come to me and been like, you know, I'm in love with someone else, I want to be with that person. I would have been like, okay, well, there's nothing you can do at that point, right? So, and again, or, you know, if it had just been like, I thought it was like she was scared of the cruising life, which is totally valid, you know? And I even offered to not go cruising and stuff to try to make it work. And, you know, like, thankfully, she didn't give in to, like, my request of that because she already knew what was right for her. Because she could have been, like, felt bad and, like, said, okay, we'll try, knowing that it wasn't going to work. And then I would have, like, delayed my life for however long. So, thankfully, she was responsible enough to know what course was right for her, and she took that course. So I don't I mean, I think the way she handled it was terrible, but I don't have any ill will towards her at all.
So how has that whole experience, like save the rudder thing for a second, but how has the personal experience impacted your cruising and as you meet people? Because it's like such a part of your story, but I can kind of think that like maybe you don't want it to be like the defining aspect of your life, because you could easily see people sort of taking pity on you and maybe interacting in a different way. So how have you handled that like out in the world?
I actually think the rudder situation like overshined the divorce by 100 times.
Okay.
So, and that's why Yachting World asked me to write an article about the rudder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and now it's been long enough that, actually now it's been long enough, there are many people that have like got turned on to my channel that don't even know about the rudder thing. Like the first video they've seen is the French Polynesia video or the New Zealand video. So that's a funny aspect too, because people are like, people watch like the passage from Bora Bora to American Samoa was pretty challenging passage, and people are like, that was insane, I can't believe you did that. And I'm just like, bro.
Where do you see this other one?
Yeah. So it's funny, it's like with that aspect. But yeah, as far as like, yeah, I don't think that only people still bring it up in comments weekly or monthly at least, which I keep being like, how many?
Divorce or the rudder
the
thing?
divorce and
Okay.
Camille.
Yeah.
And like I had the only time I've had like a bad interaction with someone in the public that recognized me from the channel was this strange dude in New Zealand who like came into a restaurant while I was eating yelling, James, oh my God, why did Camille leave you in the middle of a restaurant? And I don't know this person. I've never like, I have no, and I'm just like, I want to like jump out the window.
Yeah, really.
So, and the dude wouldn't let it up, and I was like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I've said what I'm going to say about it. So, but that's been my only sort of like real world thing. Most people are respectful. They don't bring it up,
Except for me sitting here now.
Yeah,
pushing you
but
on it.
that's what, I mean, and again, you asked me why I feel comfortable now talking about it, because I'm talking to you.
Yeah, fair.
Literally, that's the only reason I'm talking about this.
Well, I always like to, I deliberately try and start these podcast interviews with the touchier things, because like it's the kind of the elephant in the room anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and I don't know, I've learned over the years interviewing people, like you get that out of the way, and then you can go deeper on that.
Well,
stuff.
especially because last time you interviewed me, it was me and Camille.
Yeah, exactly.
Like she was going to meet me in Alaska.
I mean, the cover photo of your episode is you and the dog.
Exactly. So, yeah, very different life now. And the other funny thing, too, is like, I hadn't planned on going to the South Pacific. I was going to do Alaska, and I was going to work my way to Mexico, and then down to Chile.
Okay.
Like, that was the original plan.
I should have listened to our first interview.
And then I got to Hawaii, and my buddy Noah Peffer, who was one of the people that talked me through how to set up the drogue situation, he was telling me as I was approaching Hawaii, I was trying to organize like getting a trailer to ship TRITEIA back to LA because I knew I couldn't afford to repair in Hawaii. I didn't know what I had very limited money, and Hawaii is very expensive. And Noah said, as I approached Hawaii, he's like, dude, chill out. Get to Hawaii and just sleep. Relax. He was like, you might find you want to stay in Hawaii and go to the South Pacific. You're already that close to... And in my mind, I was like, there's no way. Like, that was not my plan. This is like, I thought, I had my idea on a certain path. And I literally hadn't even researched. I knew nothing about the South Pacific. And Noah was like, just chill out. You might want to do this. And it's so funny. Every time Noah's said anything to me like that, and it's happened a number of times, he's always been right.
Who's Noah? How
Noah
do you know him?
Peffer.
I know. How do
He's
you...
like just a really good friend of mine.
Okay.
He's like, he was a professor of nautical sciences at USC.
Cool.
He grew up on a schooner. He's just
hell
like,
yeah.
he's who I was just staying with in Maine.
Oh, okay.
Like, if there's
Yeah.
anything I need, again, he has like encyclopedic knowledge of boats.
Cool.
He is just like, if there's anything I ever wonder, I ask Noah, and he has the answer without pausing, which is fascinating.
There's so many directions I want to go. Back to, this is just a random aside, but when you started posting in Instagram like stupid comments that people leave on your YouTube, what motivated that? I love that. I think that is genius. But how did that start?
What motivated is like myself and any other vlogger, we take a lot of abuse. And I mean, I don't even post the really evil ones. I've had very evil ones, but I don't know. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start posting some of these. And I was like, I'm going to do a balance, though. I'm going to do like some positive ones and some like some terrible ones. And
Some of the tailbar ones are just funny though.
they're fantastic. Yeah. And so I started doing it, and oh my gosh, everyone's like, I love this. This is like the funniest. You know, it's like just an insight into the troll world of the internet. And there's also just bizarre ones. So
do you have one that sticks in your head? A good example?
there have been so many that I have no idea. Yeah.
We'll pull some up after.
Yeah,
Neither of us have internet right now.
Yeah, exactly. I have a bunch of them saved on my phone.
Nice.
But yeah, they're and people, everyone were like, I love that you share those. And then there are a couple of other little channels that have been like, messaged me and they're like, oh, I'm going to start doing that too. And I was like, yeah, I mean, you know, it's literally, it's like, and mostly it's like, I wanted people to like think before they speak. So like, if you see a YouTube video that annoys you, do you need to write that it annoys you? Is that necessary? Is it productive? Mm-hmm. So, you know, my mom always said, like, don't say anything nice. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So I try my very best to live by that. So yeah, that's why I started doing it, and people really enjoy it. So, but it's funny because Sarah's been like, "Oh, you should do like a mean tweets, like read some of them on YouTube, because it would be funny."
It would be really
but I don't
funny.
want to encourage it.
That's
the reason I've never done
that's
that.
fair. That's fair.
Because
That's a
it
good
would be
point.
hilarious if I read some of those, but I don't want to fan the flames of that.
So on to the rudder thing. Again, we don't have to go into the gory details, but long story. Tell the short version of the story, how you lost your rudder, and then I want to talk about seamanship.
Okay, so I was 14 days at sea, 1,000 miles from Hawaii, and the boat would not hold course. It would not hold course, and I couldn't figure it out. I had a vintage, I can't remember the name of that wind vane. A vintage auxiliary rudder wind vane.
Hydrovane.
No, it wasn't a hydrovane. It was
Like an Aries or something.
No, it was. I cannot remember the name of it.
Doesn't matter.
It was like, yeah. Anyway, it's from Scandinavia somewhere, but it was an auxiliary rudder. But the rudder was not very big, not the size of a hydrovane. So, but it would not hold course. So I got out there. I was hand steering, hand on the tiller, going. I was in like, I don't know, 14 to 16 knots, and the seas that go with that, and they were on the beam, or I was just coming into the trade, so they were kind of quartering, and I'm steering, and all of a sudden, in silence, the tiller goes soft over, and the boat comes hard up into the wind. And like, I was like, and I wiggled it, and there was nothing.
Oh, man.
And so I like ran forward, or I furled in the headsail to get the boat slow, you know, because we're just like hammering south towards Antarctica at this point. And my first thought, and fingers crossed, was that like maybe a bolt had sheared in the tiller head. I was like, hopefully this is it. But I was like, okay, well, I don't want to touch anything until I see what's happening down below, because I was like, if I pull that off, is the rudder going to fall? I don't know what's happening down there. So I zip tied my GoPro onto my sea hook, started recording, put it down there, and you can't see anything. You're just pointing it around, hoping you're getting it. Pull it up, look at it on my phone, and I could just see my rudder just swimming merrily in the sea, just like, and you could see that it was separated from the post. So the bronze tiller post had 3 rods, bronze rods. It's a mahogany rudder, and it's like sandwich construction with these rods. All 3 of the rods had failed, and it was still attached at the foot, so it was still attached to the boat. It wasn't coming off the boat, but it was just like nothing. So I was like, and so what I believe happened was I had very old sails that were really baggy, so extreme weather helm. I had the tiller lashed hard over to port, and so that meant that the rudder was hard out to starboard. And I believe that I hit a submerged sea container, because I had a big chip out of the back of the rudder, a big stripe of red paint, and then there was, when I actually hauled out in Hawaii months later, there was a big stripe of red paint on the bottom of the keel. So I think that was the first contact, was the bottom of the keel, and I think it just grazed that lashed out rudder. And I think it fractured all those bronze rods, and then just slowly snapped them. But those 2 red paint, it was like so specific.
What were you feeling when you realized, like, okay, that's kind of a worst case scenario?
I instantly started recording. Like, the moment I just started recording. And I have all the footage of me just sitting still in the cockpit. I don't think I've ever released the unedited part. I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck? At first I was like, in the first like 20 minutes, it was just not real. And then I instantly got in a wetsuit, got in snorkel gear, and dove on it. I dropped the sails, and I put out like a line with knots in it with a float in case I got away. Put on tethers, got in the water. Well, the boat was rolling and pitching with such violence. I was worried about getting knocked out. That was my biggest concern. So, and in 16 knots of wind with the seas, it was impossible for I have low freeboard. Normally, I can almost touch my rudder while holding on to the side, and I never even got a hand on it because I'm still sailing at like a knot and a half just from the boat. And so I would try to get under, and I would just be pulled taut, being dragged behind the boat. It was impossible to even get my hands because I wanted to get down, wrap a line around, and just use that as that sort of steering. Completely impossible. No way. So I got back on the boat, and then after I dove on it, that's kind of when the situation set in. And that's when I was like, okay. And the thing is, before I got in, I didn't tell any of my shore team. I told Captain David Stovall. I texted him. I was like, look, I'm not telling anyone, but I'm getting in the water, and if I lose comms, this is what, at least I got in the water if I don't come back.
Yep.
So he was like, okay, text me as soon as you get out. And I was like, okay. I got out, and Sarah had already seen the tracker do a hard. She's texting, what is happening? What's going on? And I was just ignoring.
It's the curse of having too many comms nowadays.
Yeah.
As soon as something goes out of whack, people start to wonder.
Yeah. And so then when I got back out, and I was like...
Talking to the mic more. There you go.
So then when I got back out of the water, I was just sitting there. Okay, I was like, okay, what are the options? The options are rescue and scuttle the boat or figure this out. And so, and like I said in the Yachting World article, I looked down in the cabin and imagined her filling with water. And she's perfect. I'd spent 4 years refitting her. Everything was perfect on that boat except this one situation. I was like, hell no. Hell no. That is a non-option.
So this is a perfect segue because what I wanted to ask you about is one of the reasons, I said earlier this week that this is the first time I met you was in Annapolis, but it feels like I've known you for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We've been following each other. And one of the things I've admired is the way you do things. You seem to go about things really deliberately, and on the seamanship side, you do things right, and also in a way that shows that you don't have to have $1 million boat like we're sitting on now to do it. And yet you had this pretty major failure that I didn't realize you thought you hit something. But do you think you could have, if you had fixed this in the first place before you left, do you think you could have avoided it? And how does that make you think about all this in the in the terms of seamanship? Do you feel like it was because you had overlooked one aspect of preparation?
The funny thing is I have video of my haul out. When I hauled out originally, I replaced every bronze fitting on the boat. I oversized cockpit drains. I did everything, all tri-flange, Graco, bronze, everything, top, everything. And I was so alarmed by the wooden rudder. I have video of me being very alarmed by the rudder. And the dudes at the boatyard, who are very knowledgeable, amazing boatyard, Ventura Harbor Boatyard, great dudes, they're like, it's fine. It's fine. But in their defense, I was concerned that it was wood. And they're like, boats were built out of wood for centuries. They're like, there was no soft spots. They showed me, we looked over it. So, but at that point, I was very concerned about the rudder. And I have video of me being concerned. But I was talked off the cliff.
Yep.
So I think had I been left to my own devices, I probably would have built a fiberglass rudder at that point.
Yeah.
But hindsight.
Yeah, that's the one thing, we sailed across the Atlantic in Arcturus, and that's the one thing that I also basically just ignored. Said, it's probably fine. And it was fine.
Yeah.
You sailed Arcturus after we sold it to Neil, but rudder's still fine, I guess. But that, still, I think, in my mind, I probably should have, a boat was built in 1966, still the original rudder.
Yeah.
Probably should have at least taken it apart and put it back together.
Yeah.
So anyway, you didn't really answer my question. Would you have done it differently?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would have built a Mondo fiberglass rudder if I could do it over again in the boatyard when I initially had that gut reaction, and I will always trust my gut. But at the time, I was learning so much.
Yeah.
And it's easy to overreact when you don't know what you're looking at.
Well, exactly. Yeah, that's the other side of it is you can go too far, and that's the other side of this is you never leave.
Yeah. So But yeah, if I was back in that boatyard, I would be like, because I personally can make a rudder. I can make a bomb-proof rudder. It would take me a month, but I could do it. No problem.
So, all right, James, let's fast forward to the present. We are, like we said, 200 miles from Iceland. When I first invited you on this trip, it was just to do a passage, not necessarily go to Greenland. And then some plans changed and stuff. I said, hey, you want to go to Greenland? What was your reaction?
I was, hell yes. I was so stoked. Yeah. No, because originally you were like, oh, you could do Bermuda to Annapolis, or you could do Annapolis to Lunenburg. And you were like, I'd like for you to do the Lunenburg because it's such a beautiful landfall. And I was like, awesome. I mean, the main thing for me was like just to go sailing with you. So, I was like, hell yeah, whatever you think is best, let's do that. That'll be fun. And then, once I was in the States, you're like, oh, do you want to do this? And I managed to like move my plane to get back to New Zealand. So I was like, absolutely.
What were you expecting? Like the whole thing, not just Greenland, but like, you were joking that you normally it's by yourself. I mean, your boat could probably fit in Falken's cockpit.
Yes.
And there's 11 of us on board right now, which is very different. So how did your expectations align with reality?
I was stoked about being out of my comfort zone with so many people and a giant boat. I'd never sailed on a monohull this big ever. Or a multi-hull for that matter. I'd been on like power yachts that were bigger, but never been on a sailboat this big, especially not ocean sailing. So, she seems a lot smaller at sea, which is kind of shocking to me.
Mm-hmm. Everybody says that. It shrinks.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. But yeah, I can fit two TRITEIAs and my dinghy on the deck of this boat. But so my expectations, I didn't know what to expect. I try to keep expectations at the door and just kind of like go in with a good attitude and be like, okay, let's see how this goes, So
why did you want to come then? I mean, all that way, you're literally halfway around the world. You must have had some expectations of wanting to come along.
Yeah, I mean, literally, because before it wasn't a high adventure.
Yeah,
it was just a passage. It was just to go sailing with you, so we could hang out and go sailing.
Yeah, cool.
Like literally on a big, cool new boat, and it's like your new boat. That was the whole reason I came, And it worked out because I needed to reset. So TRITEIA is in Whangarei, New Zealand right now. And I needed to reset my visa anyway. I could have just flown to Sydney, but then you invited me and I was like, well, I can go to LA, see some people, and then make my way to the East Coast. So it was all fun. It's winter in New Zealand right now, so there's not any cruising to be had. So
So now Greenland. I'm not sure what my expectations were. I mean, we're still not through the trip yet. We still got to get to Iceland, but like, what are some reflections on Greenland? Because, I'll let you answer first.
You know what, and you were like cautious with everyone saying we don't even know if we're going to be able to get in. If the ice will let us into Greenland, we might try to swing by Greenland. It was always like it was a wise way to go about it. Greenland, I honestly can't even believe my memories, and I can't believe the photos or video.
Yeah,
I've never seen anywhere so beautiful in my entire life, and I've been to like 32 countries or something like that. So, unreal.
Yeah, I wrote the other day that we're gonna need a support group after this because, like, normally you go on adventures of any kind, and like the people at home, they just don't care that much. They'll humor you and listen to your stories and stuff, but especially on something so like life changing like this, like you can't. It doesn't matter how many times you call me. No, you don't understand. It was like, I get it. Like, we're going to need, like, a support group for this afterwards.
Yeah, seriously. And it's just, like... And we got to spend so many days there.
Yeah, we were
like,
there for,
I thought we were going to
4 or 5
drive
days?
through the fjord and head to Iceland. So, we got enough time to really have a vibe. Like, we had 4 different anchorages. Well, the first was a wall and then 3 different anchorages. So we got like a serious feel for southern Greenland, and I've always been drawn to high latitude sailing.
Why?
Because I'm interested in like wild places and beautiful places and wildlife, which we didn't see a lot of wildlife, but as far as wild places go, it's hard to find a more wild place than southern Greenland.
Yeah. It's I'm still not going to be able to fully reflect until we get to Iceland, but like when we pulled into Nanortalik, that little village where we first made landfall, and like the fog lifted. I mean, we were navigating in like thick fog, and I'm just like, it was like the worst case scenario. It's like blowing 25 knots. We got in a good position to come downwind, but now I'm just like, this is like the most stressful passage of my life, and now it's thick fog. There's icebergs all around, and we saw a lot of icebergs on the radar, and never saw any of them.
It is even scarier.
Yeah, never saw any of them, in real life. And then we get inside the harbor in the fog, and it was like summer all of a sudden.
Yeah,
like the fog disappeared, and we're there, and
crystal blue skies.
The immense feeling of like satisfaction, of like accomplishment. Like I actually allowed myself to sort of let my guard down a minute once we got tied up to the dock, and just like, holy shit, I can't believe we just sailed to Greenland.
Yeah.
And like this in a lot of ways felt a lot harder than even going to Spitsbergen, which was a couple years ago. And I think it is a lot harder. But I guess, I mean, did you feel any of that? You're in a different situation as a passenger, sort of.
Well, like the funny thing for me is like going into this, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Because like once I finish this westabout circumnavigation, I'm going to leave, within a year to do an like full-time eastabout wander. Like with no, just an endless wander.
I love how far ahead you just have this plan.
Yeah. But so the whole time I was like, originally I thought I would work my way up the eastern seaboard and then go to Greenland in TRITEIA and then to Iceland. Like originally I was like, okay, that's what I got. And so when this opportunity came up, I was like, this is awesome. This means I don't have to take TRITEIA to Greenland. I get to experience it under sail, and then I can just go to the Azores and do something easy. But the bummer is now I'm like, oh, now I gotta take TRITEIA to Greenland.
I know exactly what you mean, because
like,
it doesn't count unless you do it on your own.
I don't mind that. Like it's not even that, but I want to spend a month there.
Yeah.
I want to get into like nooks and crannies. I want to visit a bunch of villages,
Yep.
That was like, it was such an amazing sort of tease.
What I don't understand is like, I talked to John Kretschmer ahead of time to get some tips on stuff, had all these pilot books and stuff. Like no one did a very good job of setting expectations of how mind-blowing the scenery and stuff is. Like I felt like were we in the same place? Like how come no one was just like freaking out about how unbelievable? Like I said, that whole book up on the shelf behind you about Svalbard and stuff. I mean, that was like out of this world, but like this was an order of magnitude even wilder than Spitsbergen was. And I just don't know why I wasn't prepared. Like why wasn't I anticipating that?
Yeah. I have no idea. The only like photos I've ever seen of Greenland are like the brightly colored buildings like we saw in the little village.
Villages, yeah.
That was my only point of reference like for all of Greenland.
And this is a dumb way to describe this because like none of us have experienced this either, but the only like fitting way to describe what it was like, it felt like being on another planet. It felt like going to another planet. Like how can this exist on Earth? Like this really was just unbelievable. That time we found that big wall that I think maybe was the one that Bob Shepton and the Wild Bunch guys climbed, but like, and I was like, I have to go over there and see what it feels like. It was 1,500 feet straight out of the ocean. And you could we put the boat like a boat length away from it or less.
And we could have gotten closer. We could have got right up on the wall.
The scale, like the feeling you had there. And this is what I said about Svalbard too, but we'll never be able to, in pictures, videos, description, you'll never be able to translate the way it felt.
No. There's nowhere.
The scale, the way it felt to be there. And it was like really, really, really special.
But it's like, I was looking back over all my photos and little video yesterday, finishing up what I wrote for the blog, and looking at it, I just shook my head the whole time I was looking at the images. I'm like, I can't believe this. This is insane. Yeah. So, but you're right. It's like I've never heard, but then again, I haven't talked to that many people that have cruised Greenland either.
Yeah.
Firsthand. So,
well, even now talking about it, it was only have we been at sea like 4 days since leaving Greenland to Iceland, something like that. Even now it feels like, did that really happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, did that really happen? Even though when we were there in the moment, it felt like that's actually what changed for me is when I was there, I was truly in the moment. I wasn't thinking ahead about this leg at all. As soon as we left, I'm like, all right, because it's been a long summer for me. Like, I'm ready to get off the boat. But I didn't feel that when we were in Greenland for some reason. I don't know if it was because I didn't allow myself to, but I was just so at peace with being there and like just enjoying it that I didn't switch until we left. And then, we've had a pretty couple tough days.
Yeah, we definitely had some challenging. Well, and to offset that, we had such a dreamy passage from Newfoundland to Greenland.
Yeah.
And
what did you call the arduous part of this leg?
Oh, I say that's the adventure tax.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's you got to pay that adventure tax, and unfortunately we're paying it after the adventure, but
It's got to come due at some point.
definitely. But yeah, in it's like 3 distinct chapters. It was like that first passage, which was great. Greenland, which was ridiculous. Me and Alejandro were talking about it. I said it's the crown jewel of the whole trip, And then this, which is funny because like this is a 650 nautical mile passage. For me, if I was on my boat, I'd be like, this is like a short passage. Because now I'm so used to doing over 1,000 miles for any stint that I'm like 650 miles, no problem. But it has been challenging because we've been
upwind the whole way and pretty rough weather in the middle there.
Yeah.
But I think, well, we couldn't have ended this passage in Greenland because you couldn't leave. Like, there's nowhere to get off. It's like you can't get off. So, I do think that's also kind of the cool thing about Greenland is like Svalbard. You can fly into Longyearbyen, you can fly into Nuuk and stuff on the west coast of Greenland. But where we were specifically, there's not really getting in or out. Like you're not, it's not like I'm leaving the boat there and handing it over to another skipper. So I kind of like the idea that you have to like pass through and continue, whether it's to Iceland or up to Nuuk or wherever. It just makes it harder and makes it feel more of an accomplishment. Like I'll tell you what, like we're like I said, we're 200 miles from Iceland, and I'm not letting myself go there yet. But when we hit the dock in Iceland, I am gonna just the sense of like relief that's gonna wash over me.
Yeah.
And having this behind me is gonna be just amazing. I'm very looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, yeah. Well, I don't want to tempt Neptune, but yeah, we're a day sail from. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, exactly. A lot can happen in 200 miles, but it's pretty nice out now. We're getting rewarded now. We just set full sail and we're sailing upwind now in about 10 knots of breeze, so it's pretty good. What are your thoughts on the boat? I mean, you mentioned it's never been on a bigger boat than this before, but what do you think?
I love this boat. The way you guys built it out with like you can lean all over the place. There's no real danger zones on this boat.
Yep.
Like it's very easy to get around. The cabin layout's good. It's like surprisingly warm down below, even though it's very chilly up top. So the heaters work very well.
Yeah, those heaters, man. Killer.
Yeah, I think it's other than like, some like little things that have to get sorted.
Like the bilge?
The bilge being the main thing.
James has become the de facto bilge pumper.
Yeah.
We have a freshwater leak in the bilge and a minor diesel leak. So we have like, it's better than a saltwater leak, but we've had to pump the bilges several times on this trip.
Yeah,
and it's
we got a better process
irritating.
figured out today, but it has,
With the vacuum cleaner.
The sound of sloshing is maddening.
Well, the problem with this boat, it's got such a shallow, there's no bilges, basically.
Yeah.
There's no, like, typical, you have, like, where the keel's bolted on, you have, like a sump down there. We don't have that. It's just, like, a canoe hull, and the water just, like, goes where it goes when the boat's heeled.
Yeah. I think I love the layout of this boat, though. But, I mean, when I saw it in Annapolis, I was like, wow, this is, like, very well done. And also, it feels like it's always had this layout. I mean, nothing feels new. Nothing feels like new construction.
Yeah,
It's like beautiful dark wood.
Yep.
It's just like well done. And like we were saying, there's 11 of us on board, and it never feels like anyone's really in each other's way, which I don't know how that's even possible.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's pretty good. You had your turn to cook for 11 of us last night. Honky quesadillas.
Oh my gosh, that was like, I felt like I was on some kind of game show. It was very challenging.
So, James, what are you going to take away from this trip now, and what's your immediate future? Are you going straight back to the boat?
Yeah. So I'll do my immediate future first, and then try to think about what I'm going to take away. Yeah. So I fly back. I'll be in Iceland for a week. And
Jim, it's okay. You can go in the camera for a second. That's Jim grabbing snacks from the snack locker.
I'll be in Iceland for a week, and then I fly back to LA for 2 weeks. I kind of got to get boat parts and stuff to ship back to New Zealand. And then I head back to New Zealand, do some boat projects for the rest of September. And then October 1st, I start pushing south.
In New Zealand.
So I want to get down to the spring will be coming on. So I want to get down to Marlborough Sounds and cruise that area for
That's where I met Mia.
The Kiwi summer. Yeah, that's
where Mia first sailed was Marlborough Sounds.
Awesome.
You can look for my anchor that I lost down there.
Yeah, I'll send you guys a postcard.
Hell yeah.
And so I'll be cruising down there. Hopefully, last summer was challenging in New Zealand. Worst recorded weather in the history of recorded weather.
Wow.
I rode out 4 tropical storms on anchor and 1 small cyclone.
In New Zealand?
In New Zealand.
Jesus.
And then the bigger cyclone, I got a berth at Opua Marina. And I was engineless for all of those, so it was like, to add it to the excitement. Now my engine's been rebuilt, long since rebuilt, and yeah, so heading down, and then in January I'll be sailing from Nelson to Tasmania to Hobart,
Oh, hell yeah.
and then next year I'll be cruising Australia and up into Southeast Asia.
Pretty cool. I mean, how far ahead you see? Like, you even said after your westabout circumnavigation, like, how much of it is like dreaming about stuff versus actually like planning? Like, how far ahead do you actually plan with buying charts and books and all the rest of that?
Nowadays, I don't really start researching a zone until about 6 months to a year ahead of time. Because like originally when I got to New Zealand, I thought it was only going to be there through cyclone season, and I thought this April I was going to sail to Australia and be working my way up into Southeast Asia by now. I got there, my engine failed in Fiji. I got it working enough to get me outside the barrier reefs, and then it never worked again. So I sailed to Fiji with no engine, which is very challenging. That's the most challenging sailing I've ever done, was between Fiji to New Zealand.
Why?
Because you get into the variables. You get out of the trades, into the variables, you're heading south, and it's like 0 knots or 40 knots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, I think I had 4 days of spinnaker sailing, 2 days of being becalmed, and then everything else was kind of heavy weather. And that was like kind of a cinematic thing in my mind, was like entering the Bay of Islands. It was a building gale. It was going to be 45 knots by the time that afternoon. I came in at first light into the Bay of Islands, engineless, somewhere I'd never been. There's no tow service there. So it was just like, okay. So I sailed within a mile of the Q dock, dropped the hook, was putting my dinghy on the hip, and the winds were already up to 25 knots blowing down the channel.
Damn.
And a good Samaritan pulled up in a little launch and was like, hey, do you want to tow? I was like, absolutely. So he towed me, and yeah. So when I got there, I had to have the engine rebuilt. It took 2.5 months. So then I was like, well, what am I doing? Like, why don't I stay in New Zealand this whole year? I was like, what stops me from staying? I was like, okay, I just have to produce content so I can keep getting paid.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, there's tons of opportunity to film. New Zealand's like Mecca for cruising.
Yeah.
I was like, there's tons of opportunity to produce content. So I decided to stay there for a year. So to your question about planning ahead, you got to be flexible too, right? So now I have a full year in New Zealand, which is nice because then I get to really like explore New Zealand, and then I'll go from there. My guess is by the time I get to Phuket, Thailand, I'll probably spend like 6 months to a year there as well.
What are you most proud of so far?
Stepping off the boat in New Zealand. I never let myself... I'm really bad about being proud about anything. And like Hawaii didn't feel... It just felt like I just kind of, by the skin of my teeth, survived. French Polynesia, like that whole thing, everything just felt like it wasn't like a bookend until I stepped off the dock, in a gale in New Zealand without a working engine. I was like, hell yes. That was like the moment. That was like, I was really, really proud. I was also very exhausted from like a hard push of doing over 6,000 miles that season from Hawaii.
Damn.
But that was like, yeah, that was the moment that I think I'm most proud
of. So what are you going to take away from this to wrap this up? Is it too early to tell?
The thing I'll take away is that I'm a solo sailor, I think. No, but I think it's been awesome, actually. It's been a great crew. Everybody's really easy to be with. There's been I've been on so many deliveries where there's like always one person that's like very difficult.
Yep.
So it's amazing. Like everyone got along wonderfully.
This is a long trip too, in multiple stages where there's plenty of time for the personalities to clash.
Yeah, and
I agree. We've had a good crew.
5 people were down with seasickness for a couple days,
myself included.
So it was like, and everybody, even people that were sick, were still kind.
Yep.
And not. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
kind of pretty rare. So, yeah, for me, it's like, I guess the takeaway is like, I'm stoked to know that I can do both and still be happy.
Yeah, that's
cool.
Not.
Yeah.
Sweet. Anything you want to leave us with, James?
Oh yeah, I guess the only thing I would like to plug is I have a little podcast called Yarns.
Yeah, when are we going to do that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I would want to do it with you and Mia in Sweden.
Oh, cool.
So
All right.
I'll come visit you guys sometime,
Hell yeah,
and we'll do it
perfect.
then. So yeah, my podcast is like I basically it's just people I meet as I
love the title, by the way.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Great
It's
job.
like it's just people I run into because like the idea is like I try to interview people. Mostly it's people that don't share their lives online
Yep.
that are doing the same thing as like all of us who do,
Yep.
and so they have the same amazing stories.
Yep.
And so I love that. And so many of them, when I'm like, well, can we sit down and have a conversation? They're like, why would anybody want to hear what I have to say? And they're like, oh, when I rounded Cape Horn the wrong way, casual, you know what I mean? And thinking that it's not a big deal,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, it's Yarns, and you can find it on wherever you find podcasts. And then also there's always a video format of it on my YouTube channel.
Awesome. Cool, man. Thank you.
All right, thanks for having me.
It's been very fun.
Let's get to Iceland.
Until next time. Yeah, really. Big thanks again to Forbes Horton Yachts for sponsoring this episode of the show. If you want to buy or sell your dream boat, go to ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. Thanks also to AG1 for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. To get your free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase, go to drinkag1.com/onthewind. That's drinkalphagolf1.com/onthewind. On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 North and hosted by me, Andy Schell, and also by Nikki Henderson, August Sandberg, Emma Garshagen, and occasionally Ben Doer. The show is mixed and produced in Frederick, Maryland by Lee Cumberland. Ads are read by us, the hosts, and occasionally by 59 North's bosun Adam Brown and podcast producer Lee Cumberland. Episode artwork and website show notes are done by Laura Parent in San Francisco. The intro theme music is composed and performed by former podcast guest, musician, and sailor Cameron Dale, while the outro music you're hearing now is, of course, by our friends in Bergen, the Stormweather Shanty Choir. We love hearing from our fans, so send your questions and comments to holdfast@59-north.com, and please do us a favor and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, hold fast.
I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time. But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said,
last time you was paid up with me, you talked up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more.
once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you the chance to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any horse. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.